You have called a simple farmer to the highest office to which any Indian can aspire. I am conscious that your choice of me as a first servant is not so much for what little I might have done, but it is the recognition of the amazing sacrifice made by Gujarat for the honor. But in truth, every province did its utmost during the year of the greatest national awakening that we have known in modern times. Though there have been aberrations, it is a fact beyond challenge that India has given a singular proof to the world that mass non-violence is no longer the idle dream of a visionary or a mere human longing. It is a solid fact capable of infinite possibilities for humanity, which is groaning for want of faith beneath the weight of violence of which it has almost made a fetish. The greatest proof that our movement was non-violent lies in the fact that the peasants falsified the fears of our worst skeptics. They were described as very difficult to organize in non-violent action, and it is they who stood the test with a bravery and endurance that was beyond all expectation. Women and children too contributed their great share in the fight. They responded to the call by instinct and played a part which we are too near and even adequately to measure. Looked at in the light of non-violence, our struggle is a world struggle, and it is a matter of great satisfaction that the nations of the earth, especially the United States of America, have heartened us by their sympathy. The recent settlement, however, renders it unnecessary to dwell at greater length upon this heroic period in the national life. Your working committee has entered into the settlement in anticipation of your approval. You are now invited formally to endorse it. The committee having accepted it as your accredited representatives, it is not, I take it, open to you to repudiate it, but it is open to you to pass a vote of no confidence in the present executive and appoint better agents. But whilst it is but meet that I should draw your attention to the constitutional position, I have no doubt whatsoever that you will endorse the settlement which I hold to be perfectly honorable for both the parties. Had we not accepted the settlement, we should have put ourselves in the wrong and thereby undone the effect of the sufferings of the past year. Indeed, we had always claimed, as satyagrahis must claim, to be ready and eager for peace. When therefore the way seemed to be open for peace, we took it. In view of the clear demand on the part of the British Indian delegation at the Round Table Conference for full responsibility, and in view of the British parties having accepted the position, and in view of the appeal made to the Congress by the Premier, the Viceroy, and many of our distinguished countrymen, the Working Committee thought that if an honorable truce could be arranged, and if it was open to the Congress to press without any reservation for what is considered to be the best for the country, the Congress should, if invited, take part in the conference and attempt to reach an agreed solution of the constitutional issue. If we failed in the attempt and there was no way open but that of suffering, then it was a privilege of which no power on earth could deprive us. Under the Constitution clause of settlement, it is open to us to press for Purna Swaraj, to ask for complete control over our defense forces, foreign affairs, finance, fiscal policy, and the like. There would be safeguards or reservations, or as the late Pandit Motilalji called them, adjustments conceived in our own interest. When power passes from one to the other by agreement, there are always safeguards in the interest of the party in need of reparation or help. The continued exploitation of India for close on 2 centuries renders it necessary for us to seek assistance in several respects from external sources. Thus, we would need military skills, and there is no reason why we may not receive English assistance in this direction. I have taken only one telling illustration out of others that may be suggested. The defense safeguard may therefore be the retention of British officers, or as some would say, even privates. But we could never let our defense be controlled by the British. We must have full power to make mistakes. We may gratefully receive British advice, never dictation. The fact is that the British Army in India is an army of occupation. Defense is a misnomer. Frankly, the army is for defending British interests and British men and women against any internal uprising. I cannot recall a single instance in which Indian army was required for the protection of India to fight a foreign war. True, there have been expeditions on the frontier, wars with Afghanistan. British historians have taught us that they were wars more of aggression rather than of defense. We must not therefore be frightened by the bogey of foreign designs upon India. In my opinion, if we need any army, we certainly do not need the octopus we are daily bleeding to support. If the Congress has its way, the army will suffer immediate reduction to its reasonable proportion. Again, we have been taught to think that our civil administration will be inefficient and corrupt if we give up the able assistance of highly paid British civilians. The administrative powers that the Congress has exhibited during recent years and the fact of its having on an ever increasing scale drawn to its assistance some of the best young men and women either without pay or on a mere pittance should sufficiently dispose of the fear of corruption or inefficiency. It would be too great a strain upon our poor purse to have to pay, by way of insurance against corruption, a premium out of all proportion to the highest possible estimate of corruption that may ever take place. It will therefore be necessary if India is to come to her own to demand a heavy reduction in the civil service expenditure and thus a consequent reduction in the emoluments of the civil service. We have claimed that many of the charges laid upon India are wholly unjust. We have never suggested repudiation of a single obligation, but we have asked and must continue to ask for an impartial investigation into the debits against us wherever we cannot agree. There is no receding from the Lahore resolution of complete independence. This independence does not mean, was not intended to mean, a churlish refusal to associate with British or any other power. Independence, therefore, does not exclude the possibility of equal partnership for mutual benefit and dissolvable at the will of either party. If India is to reach her independence through consultation and agreement, it is reasonable to suppose that there is a strong body of opinion in the country to the effect that before partnership could possibly be conceived, there must be a period of complete dissociation. I do not belong to that school. It is, as I think, a sign of weakness and of disbelief in human nature. Federation is a fascinating idea, but it introduces new embarrassments. Princes will not listen to severance. It is severance of British connection. But if they come in the true spirit, it will be a great gain. Their association must not be to impede the progress of democracy. I hope, therefore, that they will not take up an uncompromising attitude that they may be wholly inconsistent with the spirit of freedom. I wish they would, without any pressure, give us an earnest of their desire to march abreast of the time spirit. Surely, the fundamental rights of their subjects should be guaranteed as of the rest of the inhabitants of India. All the inhabitants of federated India should enjoy some common elementary rights, and if there are rights, there must be a common code to give relief from any encroachment upon them. Nor can it be too much to expect that the subject of the state should be to an extent directly represented on the federal legislature. But before all comes the question of Hindu Muslim or rather communal unity, the position of Congress was defined at Lahore. Let me recite the resolution here. In view of the lapse of the Nehru report, It is unnecessary to declare the policy of the Congress regarding communal questions. The Congress, believing that in an independent India, communal questions can only be solved on strictly national lines. But as the Sikhs in particular and Muslims and other minorities in general had expressed dissatisfaction over the solution of the communal question proposed in the Nehru report, the Congress assures the Sikhs, Muslims, and other minorities that no solution thereof in any future constitution can be acceptable to the Congress that does not give full satisfaction to the parties concerned. Therefore, the Congress can be no party to any constitution which does not contain a solution of the communal question that is not designed to satisfy the respective parties. As a Hindu, I adopt my predecessor's formula and present the minorities with a Swadesi fountain pen and a paper and let them write out their demands. And I should endorse them. I know that it is the quickest method, but I require courage on the part of the Hindus. What we want is a heart unity, not patched up paper unity that will break under the slightest strain. That unity can only come when the majority takes courage in both the hands and is prepared to change places with the minority. This would be the highest wisdom. Whether the unity is reached that way or any other, it is becoming plainer day after day that it is useless to attend any conference unless that unity is achieved. The conference can give us an agreement between the British and us. It can perhaps help us to come nearer to the princess, but it can never enable us to achieve unity that must be hammered into shape by ourselves. The Congress must leave no stone unturned to realize this much desired end. It must be clear to all of us that the Congress can be useful for attaining Purna Swaraj only to the extent that it has gained power. The past 12 months have undoubtedly given it a power which he who runs may see. But it is not enough and can be easily frittered away by hasty action or by pride. He is a spendthrift who lives on his capital. We must therefore add to our power. One way to do so is on our part to fulfill to the letter the conditions of the settlement. The other is to consolidate our gains. I therefore propose to devote a few lines to this part of our activity. We have made much headway in the matter of the boycott of foreign cloth. It is a right as well as a duty. Without it, the impoverished millions of India must continue to starve. For if cheap foreign cloths continue to be dumped down in the villages of India, the charkha cannot flourish. Foreign cloth must therefore be banished from the land. It is therefore want of easy employment in their own villages that leads to starvation. Incessant propaganda is necessary to rid the country of chronic unemployment, which has become the second nature with our peasantry. The best propaganda is to do sacrificial spinning ourselves and wear khaddar. The All India Spinners Association has done much valuable work, but it is for the Congress to create this spinning and the khaddar atmosphere. This, to my mind, is the best and the most effective propaganda of boycott. It has been suggested that the argument against foreign cloth applies to indigenous mill cloth, but our mills do not produce all the cloth we need. For years to come, they may continue to supply the balance that may be required over and above handspun cloth, but even more mills may prove a hindrance if they compete with khaddar or resort to questionable devices to push their wares. Fortunately, many mills are patriotically working in cooperation with the Congress and are beginning to appreciate the virtue of khaddar in the interest of the toiling millions. But I can certainly say that if our mills unpatriotically hurt khaddar instead of complimenting it, they must face an opposition somewhat similar to that against foreign cloths. The foreign cloth merchants will do well to bear the Congress attitude in mind in this regard. Foreign cloth boycott is a permanent thing, not conceived as a political but as an economic and social measure of permanent value for the welfare of the masses. These merchants will do well to give up their foreign cloth trade. Everything possible is being done to help them, but some very big sacrifices on their part is essential. English, Japanese, and other foreign merchants will, I hope, not misunderstand the Congress attitude. If they will help India, they will deny themselves the India trade in foreign cloth. They have other markets and other enterprises. This brings me to picketing. This has not been and cannot be given up. I give below the relevant clause of the settlement. Picketing shall be unaggressive and it shall not involve coercion, intimidation, restraint, hostile demonstration, obstruction to the public, or any offense under the ordinary law. And if and when any of these methods is employed in any place, the practice of picketing in that place will be suspended. Picketing is a common law of right. Its function is gentle persuasion, never coercion or violent restraint on liberty. I use the adjective violent advisedly. The restraint force of public opinion there always will be. It is healthy, elevating, and conducive to the growth of liberty as distinguished from license. Non-violent picketing is designed to create public opinion and atmosphere which should become irresistible. This can best be carried on by women. I hope, therefore, that they will continue the marvelous work begun by them and earn the eternal gratitude of the nation and, what is more, the blessings of the starving millions. The idea of boycott of British goods is almost as old as the Congress. We know that after the advent of Gandhiji on the political platform, boycott of British goods was replaced by that of foreign, not only British cloth. He interpreted it in terms of economic and social uplift, whereas the boycott of the British goods as such is a political and punitive measure. We must withdraw the political weapon. We cannot be sitting at the friendly conference table and outside making designs to hurt British interests. Whilst therefore we must, for the same time, being withdraw British goods boycott, we must intensify Swadeshi, which is the birthright of every nation. Whatever we produce in our country, we must encourage to the exclusion of foreign, whether British or other. This is the condition of national growth. Thus, we must encourage and carry on banking, shipping, and the like. We may not belittle or neglect them on the ground of their inferiority or dearness. Only by wide use and helpful criticism may we make them cheaper and better. Equality of treatment in the case of hopeless unequals ought to mean raising the less favored up to the level of the most favored. Thus, equality of treatment for suppressed classes on the part of the so called superior classes means raising the former to the latter's level, the latter sacrificing their substance and stooping to conquer. In relation to the British, we have hitherto occupied a position in some respects lower even than the suppressed classes. Protection of Indian industries and enterprise to the exclusion of British or foreign is a condition of our national existence even under a state of partnership. Protection within even the British Commonwealth is no newfangled notion. It is in vogue in the dominions to the extent necessary for their growth. Just as boycott of foreign cloth is an economic necessity for the sake of the starving millions, boycott of intoxicating drink and drugs is a necessity for the moral welfare of the nation. The idea of total prohibition was born before its political effect was thought of. The Congress conceived it as a measure of self purification. Even if the government earmarked the revenue from this traffic for purely prohibition purposes, our picketing of these shops would continue, no doubt subject to the same severe restrictions as in the case of foreign cloth. We cannot resist still so long as there is a yard of foreign cloth entering the country or a single liquor shop corrupting our misguided countrymen. The salt raids must stop. Defiance of salt laws for the sake of disobedience must stop. But the poor living in the neighborhood of salt areas are free to make and sell salt within the neighborhood. The salt tax is not gone, it is true. In view of the likelihood of the Congress participating in the conference, we may not press for the immediate repeal of the tax, which is bound to come very soon. But the poorest, on whose behalf the campaign was undertaken, are now virtually free from the tax. I hope that no traders will seek to take an undue advantage of the relaxation. The foregoing perhaps shows you how uninterested I am in many things that interest the intelligentsia. I am not interested in loaves and fishes or legislative honors. The peasantry do not understand these. They are little affected by them. I believe that Gandhiji's 11 points mean the substance of Swaraj. That which does not satisfy them is no Swaraj. Whilst I would respect the rights of landlords, rajas, maharajas, and other to the extent that they do not hurt the sweating millions, my interest lies in helping the downtrodden to rise from their state and be on the level with the tallest in the land. Thank God, the gospel of truth and non-violence has given these an inkling of their dignity and the power they possess. Much still remains to be done, but let us make up our minds that we exist for them, not they for us. Let us shed our petty rivalries and jealousies, religious feuds, and let everyone realize that the Congress represents and exists for the toiling millions, and it will become an irresistible power working not for greed or power but for the sake of common humanity. There is one part of the constructive program which I have not dealt with already. That is the all important work of removing untouchability. The recent heroic struggle on the part of the nation would have been more glorious if Hindus has purged Hinduism of this evil. But heroism or glory apart, no Swaraj would be worth having without this supreme act of self-purification. And even if Swaraj is won whilst this stain continues to blacken Hinduism, it would be as insecure as a Swaraj without a complete boycott of foreign cloth. In conclusion, I may not forget our brethren overseas. Their lot in South Africa, in East Africa, and in the other parts of the world is still hanging in the balance. Deen Bandhu Andrews is happily in South Africa helping our countrymen. Pandit Hridaynath Kunjuru has specialized in the Indian question in East Africa. The only consolation the Congress can give is to assure them of its sympathy. They know that their lot must automatically improve to the extent that we approach our goal. In your name, I would appeal to the governments concerned to treat with consideration the members of the nation which is bound at a very early date to enter upon her heritage and which means ill to no nation on earth. We ask them to extend to our nationals the same treatment they would have us when we are free to extend to theirs. This is surely not asking too much. I invite you to conduct your proceedings over which you have asked me to preside in a manner befitting the grave occasion at which we have met. Differences of opinion are bound to exist, but I trust that everyone here will cooperate to make our deliberations dignified and conducive to the attainment of our goal.